2002. So there's hope for me in project management, I guess. You know, I have a path finally. You know, as the ecosystem evolved, so have her responsibilities. And in 2012, her role was expanded to include leadership responsibilities for information and network security, privacy and security risk management, as well as identity and access management. So there's a lot that she covers. As Chief Information Privacy and Security Officer, she has responsibility for the protection of Henry Ford's provider, insurance, retail, and research businesses. Her sensitivity to the operational needs of these various businesses helps her guide the objectives of her team to ensure that the operations are successfully married with the technology or regulatory requirements. Meredith is an active member of the Healthcare Compliance Association as well as CSOHIMSS and the International Association of Privacy Professionals since 2004. She is also a proud alumna of the University of Detroit Mercy, where she received her Master's in Health Services Administration and her Bachelor of Science in Computer Information Systems. She's an avid supporter of her alma mater's mission and serves on the advisory boards for the Center for Cybersecurity and Intelligence Studies and the Health Information Management Program. So, without further ado, welcome Meredith.
I want to make sure you can hear me good. Everyone's good? Okay, so I didn't want to stand behind this podium because I hate podiums. I walk when I talk, so that's how I keep you guys engaged, because I get the pleasure of talking to you after lunch. Isn't this awesome? So I want to thank you for bringing me here to kind of share our experiences at Henry Ford Health System, and I'll go through really the evolution of our journey, pretty much what we've been dealing with since 2003. And it's been a very interesting journey, to say the least, but we're still very excited and optimistic about things to come, even though we have all types of threats that are happening every day. But what I'm going to focus on is not necessarily the technology pieces. As a technologist, of course, I always gravitate towards that because I like nice, shiny objects. I'm a geek. So I like those things. I like technology and I want to implement it. I want to do all the great things with it. I want to enable the business. But truth be told, if you really want to have a very robust privacy, security, or risk program, you can't always think about technology. You have to kind of start at the beginning of it all. The things that we learned, the basics when we were all in school, is you look at the people, you look at the process, and then you enable all of that with technology. So I'm going to talk more about the people in the process than I am going to talk about technology. So if you wanted to hear about encryption and firewalls and DLP and all that kind of stuff, we're going to talk about that. Okay? So I am in the room with maybe 150 of my most closest friends. And so the things that I will share with you today are real live examples of what we've actually gone through. So I'm going to trust that you will hold this information between us in the room and all that great stuff. So let's get going. So let's talk about Henry Ford Health System. Who are we? So we are in the Metro Detroit area, servicing most of southeastern Michigan. We are a $6 billion company, so we are fairly large. 6 acute care facilities, approximately 2,500 plus beds, 60 physician practices, 60 plus physician practices that we have, substance abuse facility, behavioral health facilities that are standalone, research programs, specialty centers and institutes, approximately 31,000 workforce members. A lot of folks, a lot of people that we have to deal with. 1,300 member medical group. The great thing about this, how many providers do we have in the room? Provider organizations, okay? So you guys love your physicians, don't you? They are like the most interesting group of individuals ever, and very entitled, very, I want everything, I want access to everything, I want it on every device, and I want it at any time. So, so the fact that we have 1,300 of those that are part of our medical group makes it very interesting. We have 1,000 plus member physician network, and so these are individuals that affiliate with Henry Ford Health System, or they're contracted with Henry Ford Health System, but they're not necessarily our employee doctors. We have 30 plus primary care centers, a health plan, so we're the second largest health insurer in the state of Michigan. We have a home health division, hospice division, retail pharmacy, optical care, occupational health, long-term care facilities, and other extended care services that we offer. So I normally go through the ecosystem of Henry Ford Health System because I want people to understand I kind of envy smaller organizations because you are a little bit more nimble than we are. When you have multiple entities like this, it's a lot of moving pieces. So we're blocking and tackling really quickly all the time because there's so much going on. So, but what I want to say is, even though we've been able to do some of the things at Henry Ford, the things that we've done have not really been rocket science. So you can take these same concepts, these same programs, and you can actually scale them to the size of your organization. And so that's what I want to tell people. They typically say, well, Meredith, you have a big organization, you have a big budget, you have a lot of people, so that's why you've been able to do all these things. That's partly true, but you can still do the same things even if you don't have those types of resources available to you. So what defines us? One of the things that I always liked about this organization is that we were really passionate about our people. We really believed in the fact that they were the ones that supported our culture. So when we start to think about privacy and security and workflows and how do we build these into the workflows, we had to kind of start with what is the spirit that's embodied with our people? Do they see this as a part of their job every day? Because truth be told, if you can't get to the hearts and minds of those individuals, you basically have no privacy and security program. Because they're making decisions every day. You're giving them access to things, you're giving them documents, most of it is PHI or other sensitive information, and they now have to make a judgment call. What am I going to do with this? Am I going to disclose it? Am I going to do it securely? So how do you really get them to think about privacy and security long before they hit that button or click on that link? So you have to kind of start with your people. So that's one of the things that we really focused on within our organization. So what was the industry perspective? Can many of you relate to this? Let's take ourselves back to 2003, 2004. How did they really see privacy in 2005, security? Who were we? We were the compliance team. We're the necessary evil. Why are we doing this? This is non-regulatory in focus. It's technology only. It's only an IT problem. This is what we had to balance back then. So what our goal was is to say, how do we create something over time that creates a better balance and really get us out of this perspective of our security team being the team of no. Do you guys hear that all the time? So we don't want to go to security because every time we talk to them, they say no. So what I say to my team is that we never say no to our customer because our business is these are our customers. We don't say no. Now I might say it depends, and we might have to assess it first, and we'll provide you with a way to do it in the most secure and protected manner, but we typically try not to say no. Because our job is to do what? We are to enable the business, not prevent the business from doing what they need to do. Now, if what you're asking me is illegal, it's a gross violation of a regulation or a law, I'm absolutely positively going to say no. But that's really the only instance where we would do that. So we really wanted to create a better balance with this. We didn't feel that we were being portrayed appropriately within our organization, so we started to make some really radical changes over time. So again, if you are looking at your program and you're trying to create a culture of confidentiality, which is what we call it at Henry Ford, we talked about people, process, and technology. But if you're missing that executive leadership and board commitment, it's going to be very difficult for you to be able to create cultural change within your organization. So we started to lobby the board and started to talk to the executive leadership and give them real world examples. So one of the things that I did, and I don't know if you guys have done this before, but whenever there's a breach in any other organization, any other industry, I will ride that breach to the nth degree for my benefit. And I will start to turn the question around on my executive leadership to say, do we really want to be Target? So you're not going to be supporting this area. So that means you must really want to be Target, or you must really want to be Home Depot, or you must really want to be Amazon. And so that's when they started to say, well, yeah, we really don't want to be those things. So now what do you need, Meredith? So I put this on the slide because it's very important for you to be able to have, again, we're back to balance. Balance between what your executive leadership and your board is committed to, and balance between your people, your process, and your technology. Okay? All right, so one of the things that we did with our team, we realized years ago that apparently we didn't really have a mission. So even though Henry Ford had a mission, and we were driven by Henry Ford's mission, I got my entire team in a room and said, in order for us to really start to make cultural change, we need to look at what we're doing and why we are doing it. What are we trying to build within our organization? And so I made them come up with a mission statement for our team. And it had to be in line with the Henry Ford mission statement. And one of the things that I thought was really great is that they talked a lot about the customer, which again, we're back to the people part of it all. These are the people that we're doing the work that we're doing every day. We're doing it for those folks. So I thought that was really cool that we did come up with that. So I would encourage you, if you haven't really talked with your teams about why we're doing the work that we're doing every day, you need to probably start with the mission statement, okay? So in terms of vision, it's the same thing. What is the vision? Who do we want to be when we grow up? My team hates when I ask them that question. But really, what is the vision of our department? Who do we actually want to be? So we think of it in terms of how many parents do we have in the room? Okay, pretty much everybody in the room are parents. So you have like these cycles with your kids. They start off as babies, and then they grow and they're toddlers, and then they move into the terrible twos and all of that. But then they move into these different phases, but they learn different things as they move throughout that continuum. So how does your team really grow and evolve? We were babies when we started all of this. Now we learned a little bit more about the regulations. We learned a little bit more about our operations. We eventually have to be a grown-up at some point in time. We're not there yet. We're like preteen at this point. We're not there yet. But what is the vision? And so one of the things that I thought was interesting that came out is that a collective mindset, again, that's cultural. That's not technical. It's how do we get people thinking the same way about the work that they're doing every day and how they can protect that work as they're doing it. So that was something else that we did. Get a mission, get a vision. It will help your team be more successful. Okay, so this is the structure of our team. We have 60 individuals. These 60 individuals protect Henry Ford Health System on a daily basis. We have 4 teams, really it's 5, but one of them are kind of combined together. We have our Information Privacy Services team. These are our individuals that do investigations, training and education. They deal with our patients, so when a patient calls and they want to talk about, oh my God, you guys breached my privacy, those are the folks that they talk to. And these are very compassionate people. These are people that are skilled at diffusing situations. So we've trained them in a way where they now know how to do that. So we just don't put you on the phones immediately with the patient because it's really a sensitive situation. I now have to do something very specific for Henry Ford. I have to now perform service recovery because we have now done something that has breached the trust of that patient. So these folks are skilled at doing that, but they work on our policies, they're out in the business, they're touching and they're feeling everybody. So this is a very essential part of our team. We have a privacy and security risk management services team. And so these are the individuals, there's 10 of them. They do nothing all day but risk assess and manage risk for us from an IT or privacy and security perspective. So how many of you have risk management functions within your organization? How many of you engage with those risk management functions? That number was much less than what it was before. You really have to start looking at privacy, security, or IT risk as a risk at an enterprise level. So in a provider organization, we have clinical risk, we have financial risk, we have IT risk, we have supply chain risk, we have vendor risk, we have all of these levels of risk. But if you're looking at them all in silos, you can potentially bring your organization to its knees because you're assuming risk for an organization without looking at it for the full enterprise. So we really do have a function that rolls up into our enterprise risk management function. Hopefully you guys are doing the same thing. We have an identity and access management team. So these are the individuals that do provisioning all day. They make sure you have access to all of your systems. They make sure that your identity is managed from the time that you come into Henry Ford Health System, transition to whatever role you're going to be in throughout your tenure here, and then they terminate you out of the system once you're no longer with us. So is this the crux of security? Do you guys see it that way? That identity access piece, is that the crux of security? Do you think it is? I see people saying no. I see some people saying yes. For us at Henry Ford, it really is. Because again, we're back to the fact that I'm giving you access to do something with data every day, and you have to make a judgment call. How are we managing those individuals and the access that we give them? We don't give you access, we don't have risk. But the fact that we do, we now have to manage it. And then our last team is the Network and Information Security Services team. So yes, we do manage actually the network. So these are the individuals that manage the perimeter. So they're dealing with the firewalls, they're dealing with all the technical components related to our perimeter. And it's 25 of those individuals, along with the Information Security Services team that do a lot of the analyses and security reviews for our applications. Okay? And I'm sorry I have a cold, so I'm trying to catch my breath. Can someone bring me some water or something? Thank you. Okay. So once we talked a little bit earlier about incident response. And we know that sometimes if you don't have a good plan in place, you are going to be scattered, you're going to be all over the place, nobody knows who's kind of leading the effort. How do you really get a centralized way of you doing everything? So we decided when we combined all of these groups together that we wanted to become the central investigation unit for the entire enterprise. So which means managers no longer investigate privacy or security incidents, because what we found is that they were biased sometimes in the way that they conducted those reviews. Because guess what? What's your name, darling? Barbara. So Barbara, I've been working with Barbara for 20 years. Barbara's been my friend. Barbara's daughter and my daughter grew up together. I love Barbara. But now Barbara has violated privacy or someone's privacy. So am I going to be objective when I'm actually investigating and reviewing that concern for Barbara? 9 times out of 10, you're probably not. Because Barbara's your friend. So we remove that element from our process. Therefore, we can be objective. We don't know who Barbara is. So we're going to come in and we're going to ask those questions. We're going to conduct that investigation in a way that's going to support Henry Ford Health System. Okay? So that's something that we chose to do. Excuse me, guys. I'm going to grab some water. I got background noise now. So response teams, we centralized our response teams. So this became an evolution for us after we had our second breach. Okay. So how many breaches do you guys think we had? It's all on the website, so you can probably see it. We've had 5 media reportable data breaches. People ask me, why have you been able to get the level of traction that you've been able to get in your organization? And it has been because we had what? 5 data breaches, and we wanted to stop having them. So we had to start thinking about our program differently. We had to start deciding how we were going to put some rigor and some governance around what we were doing so we can have a decrease in those incidences. So we looked at some of the councils and response teams that we did not have in place when these actual incidents happened and decided, and I just saw Beth right there, and I see you. But we decided that we were going to go ahead and put some structure around this. So we do have an Enterprise Privacy and Security Council. So these are the individuals that can approve policy at the enterprise level. So they can make sure that operationally we can push this out to all of our hospitals. So that is a very important group, and we didn't have that group in place as strongly as we have it now. The Code B Alert Team, and I'll talk a little bit more about Code B in a minute, but of course, you probably know it stands for breach because we've had a lot of those. So how do we put a rapid response team in place? The moment that we know that we have a breach and we've actually met the definition, how do we actually come together and make sure we're responding to that breach? That's the team that actually does that. And then how many of you have gotten these OCR data requests? Don't you love those things? Pretty vague. And so we have a team that actually comes together to make sure that we're responding appropriately to those. Normally when we get them, we have about 14 days to respond to the request. So I need to make sure that people are pretty much dropping everything that they're doing and they're readjusting their schedules so we can get all of this data out the door at the request of OCR. Okay? So those are teams we put in place. Again, do you need money to do that? No. You can put it all on paper and you can decide. You don't need a robust program to be able to do these things. So this associate program, this was another issue we had. We had a breach that was actually because of a business associate. We had to eventually terminate that business associate because they breached us 3 times. Okay? So do you guys have a process in place when you have to actually move a VA out of your environment? Does anybody have a process for how they do that? Have you ever thought that you need to have a process? Because truth be told, with that particular vendor, they were doing about 60% of our transcription work at the system. So when I decided that I could no longer allow them to be in my environment, I now have an operational problem. 60% of our transcription is being done by this one vendor. So we went through a 3-month process to get them out of our environment, but it took 16 vendors to do the work of that one vendor. So what I try to tell people is you really need to put some control around your business associates and making sure that you have balance, because you can't really have one BA doing that much work for your organization. It doesn't allow you to be flexible. That was a lesson learned for us, because we were not flexible in this situation. So it took me 3 months to be able to terminate that contract and get them out. So what we decided to do is, how do we put, again, a process in place for how do we manage these individuals, whether they're individuals or companies. And so we chose to put this program together. We inventory all of our BAs. This is an old number, since 1450, we're 1,600 now. So that's a lot of individuals, a lot of companies, a lot of data being exchanged. We did some risk ranking on those to make sure that we knew what type of information they were actually getting from us and what kind of services were they offering us. Because the risk could be different depending on who they are and what they have access to. And then we did some other management as it relates to who can sign a BA agreement. So in your organization, I need you guys to call out a little bit. Who signs BA agreements in your organization?
CFO.
CFO, compliance officers,
Privacy officer.
privacy officers. So that's pretty good. Are they the only ones that can sign them? Okay, I have not heard that before. So one of the things that we've done in our organization, there's only 2 individuals that can sign BAs for the entire enterprise. It's myself and my deputy ISO. Now, before you sign those BA agreements, what are you doing with that vendor? Are you risk ranking them? Are you doing a security review? Or are you just signing? I mean, seriously, I'm asking a question. This is going to be interactive. We're friends here. So is anyone doing any type of risk ranking or risk analysis or security reviews on their BAs before they actually sign that BA agreement? I see one head shaking. So 2, please do not enter into these agreements with BAs without doing a security review. You're required to do it, number 1. And number 2, when we start to look at the second round of audits that are coming out, who are they focusing on? Okay, so they're focusing on BAs, but is it only just the BAs? They're going to focus on the BA, but they're going to focus on the organization, the CE, and what did you do before you entered into that agreement. So please make sure that you're doing that. You need to have some rigor around that. More water. Sorry. So in terms of branded programs, so we talk about incident response, and we said that we needed to have some more structure around this. So after our 4th breach, so I'm going through the continuum. After our 4th breach, we realized that we did a couple things wrong in the first 3 breaches. So even though we had a defined way of responding to the incident, we didn't do a very good job from a communication standpoint, because again, how large is Henry Ford Health System? It's a very large system. So we didn't really have a plan in place to make sure that not only are we communicating with the regulatory agencies that are external to Henry Ford, but how are we communicating with our team members every day that are going to touch those patients? So for those of you on the provider side, if you're in a breach situation and you give that nice letter, because we all get them, the nice letter that tells you to call the call center that's been set up, and here's how you can get more information about this breach. Do they ever really call the call center, or do they bring this letter to their provider when they come next time? Now, they might not do it in your organization, but in our organization, we have patients showing up at the front desk saying, hey, I got this. Can you please explain to me, medical assistant? Can you please explain to me, physician? Can you please explain to me, what does this really mean? Well, guess what? We never told these people that the breach was actually happening. Okay, lesson learned. We need to make sure that the frontline folks know exactly what's going on. So what we did is we created a branded program, and it's called the Code B program, okay? So every Code B starts with the Code A. So as you can see, a Code A is an assessment, because we have to really take a look at what is really going on with this incident. There's only 2 people in the organization that can use the B word. Okay? So you don't let people use the B word because everything is not a breach. So we go through the analysis and the assessment to see whether we can look at all of the data, all of the details, we activate our incident response plan, and we take a look at the definition of what constitutes a breach. And coming out of that, after we do our risk assessment, we'll say, yeah, this kind of meets all of the requirements. We need to now call a code B. So what happens at that point, there's a notification that comes out of my office, and it actually goes to all of our senior executives first. So we actually have a chain of command that we follow. So it goes to our senior executives first, and I let them know, hey, we have a breach going on. That means the communications are going to have to go out, and we're going to have to contact the media, and all of the other regulatory things that we're required to do. So we put a package together, and we always brand it with that big blue B that's up there. And what we train people to do, because how many emails do you guys get a day? Okay? I get about 250 a day. It's crazy. So what we've done is to try to help people identify very important messages coming out of our compliance areas and our security and privacy areas. When you see that big blue B coming from my office, we need you to open it, we need you to read it, and we need you to disseminate it to all of your team members. Therefore, we give them a script to follow, we give them an FAQ, so when the patient shows up with the letter, they can say, oh, well, hey, I got an FAQ, and I can give you more information about that. We give them a way to really warm transfer people to the call center if they're calling in. So we tell them how to warmly transfer them over. Because what's not customer service? The patient calls in and says, I got this letter. I don't really know what it means. Well, thank you so much, ma'am, for calling. But here's another number that you need to call. Is that going to make our patients happy? No, it's not. So we try to enable and really empower our frontline staff to be able to address these things without us being in the room with them. So the interesting thing about this particular breach that spawned this communication plan was that we had 3 breaches happen within a 9-month period. Every 3 months, I got another breach. So before I could close the call center on one, we were getting another one. And then it happened again. So we had some people that were frequent flyers, okay? Which means they were in the 2nd breach and they were in the 3rd breach. So now we've breached their privacy in a 6-month period twice. Okay, 2 people. One of them was a board member. So that was fun. And the other one was one of a large family that donates to Henry Ford Health System. So that was really fun because they give a lot of money to us. So what I also had to do, because I wasn't going to call those 2 people, because I felt that we owed them a phone call. We didn't actually just owe them another letter. Because I think I would be pretty upset if I got now a 2nd letter in a 3 to 6 month period that you've done the exact same thing again because of a communication problem, a program failure, or whatever the case is. So I engaged my COO. So I went to the 2nd in command and said, okay, Bob, I'm not going to call these people. But guess who's going to call them? You are. Okay? And he kind of gave me a little bit of pushback, and he said, why do you want me to call them? And I said, because we now have to elevate this to not just me, because I'm the one that was signing the 1st letter. I'm going to be signing the 2nd letter. They need to hear from someone else about the fact that we are really grossly sorry for what has happened. So I gave him a script to follow. I sat in the room with him. I passed him tissue when he started sweating. It was 45 minutes of the most interesting conversation that he had ever had with a patient. And so when he got off the phone, he said, so you mean to tell me that you have to do this every time that you have a breach? And I said, well, we don't do it for, if it's a breach that's affecting 10,000 people, we're not going to do it for all 10,000, but if you call my office, we will talk to you about it. And if that means I have to sit on the phone for 45 minutes at 8 o'clock at night and hear you talk about how we have done something to you, because I'm now in service recovery mode, I now have to build the trust back with this patient. And the fact that I'm a chief is not going to stop me from doing that. I have to do it because I care about the patients. So in this instance, I made him do it, okay? So after the 1st call, when he dabbed the sweat, and we talked about it, and before he called the 2nd person, and after he got off the phone with the 2nd person, he looked at me and he said, okay, so what is it that you need? Because I never want to do that again. And so that now opened up a conversation, because what I typically find for those of us that are in security or privacy roles, our executives have no idea what we have to go through in order to mitigate or to reduce risk for the organization or to address a problem. The moment you bring your top executives into that discussion and they get to see it firsthand, it really does change